The world runs on nuance, on context, on understanding that things are very, very complicated and there are multi-layers. Like the society, the world is like an onion. It's like Shrek, okay? And to really understand a thing, we have to be able to analyze a thing. We have to understand its context, its layers, where it comes from, the various different factors that come into play that build up either a problem or the solution to the problem. And for context, I trust nobody better to do so than Uncle Dennis.
Hi, everybody. Fireside chat number
241.
241. Definitely worth binge watching.
I absolutely love Dennis Prager's dog. I just have to say that. It is a loaf. It is a potato. It is an adorable dog sitting next to the fire. I love it. I love it. Absolutely love it. It is unfortunate that beautiful dog is owned by a suit packed full of mashed potatoes, but whatever, it's fine.
How long would it take to watch 241 episodes? Let's see. 5 times 2 is a lot. Yeah. Anyway, I'm Dennis Prager. It is a wonderful thing that I have this. It's a blessing in my life. And thank God a lot of people think it's a blessing in their life too. It is truly spontaneous. I obviously think of something to talk about prior, and then I take your questions, but it's unrehearsed. And there are no teleprompters, although I will be reading from an editorial in the Wall Street Journal on the topic that I'm opening up with. So anyway, welcome to the Fireside Chat.
Gotcha.
This is Otto. Otto is my beloved bulldog.
Yes, Otto is cute.
Best known dog in America. And he's very modest about it, which is a beautiful thing. But we raised him with good values. So I have not talked about the horror of the killings of the kids in Texas.
I just realized, yeah. I guess this is not like the full episode. This is like the lead into it. I'm kind of curious about something before we continue to watch this real quick. Is this do you have to like pay a premium to be able to watch like the whole thing? Where are we at? I just found this. I think you have to pay a premium to actually be able to watch the whole thing. Let's see. Watch the full episode, Fireside Chat with Dennis Prager here on PragerU. Let's see. Is this premium content? Is it?
241.
Oh, no. 35 minutes. 35 minutes. Okay. All right. You know what? Let's. I'm really curious what Uncle Dennis is going to say about all this stuff. So,
one case, it happened right after we recorded the Fireside Chat because I had to go on the road. And so we did it a day early. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I'm just explaining. I don't talk about everything in the news. That's not what the Fireside Chat is about. But large issues that I have something that I think is important to say and is not just of immediate significance, then I address it.
Okay. All right. I'm all ears, Uncle Dennis.
And then we had the special session with Batya, the Newsweek editor and writer.
Oh my God, just fucking get to it.
Has gone up, correct? Mm-hmm. Reason I didn't address it, which is fine with me because I don't like immediate. I want to say something immediately about something.
Oh my God, it's all about you.
Issues, and it could obviously take hours, but I don't want to take a lot of time. And let me read to you, it's why I have this paper here, from a Wall Street Journal editorial just on the guns issue. I think they said it so concisely and so well, what I believe. I'd like to read that to you.
Okay.
Would background checks beyond those already exist help? Unlikely, since these young men rarely have a criminal record. It's a very important point. Nothing in with these, and they're almost all young men, especially with the mass shootings, or certainly with shootings of kids. And if you did a background check in any of these cases, in Columbine, the most notorious one, or up in the Sandy Hook in Connecticut, or the Texas shooting, nothing would have happened. The background check would not have stopped them from
Absolutely, 100% incorrect. 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 The main problem that you have with that is you're trying to argue about Uvalde, and the Uvalde shooting. That kid had legit threatened to kill his family with knives. And he had to have his knives taken by the police. The only reason why he was allowed to have a fucking gun is because his dad, after his dad had been threatened by him with death, co-signed that, yeah, no, it's fine, you should have a gun. Like, a legitimate good system of background check would have been like, no, you can't have a fucking gun. Are you fucking kidding? No. No. Absolutely not. Now, does that mean that the kid wouldn't still find some other way to get a gun and still could have done the mass shooting? Of course, he probably could have. But we don't know that. We don't know that. What we do know is that a system was set in place, a gun law, a restriction was set in place, and it was poorly enforced. And it might have actually made a difference. It also speaks to the absolute travesty of how we treat people. That this sort of thing, this person obviously was having some very real problems. And he didn't get help for it. He was just left alone. So, I mean, I don't know. Prager really should have learned what the fuck he was talking about before he said that. That's weird.
getting the guns. That's point number one they're making. They rarely have a criminal record. Number two, a 6-day waiting period to receive a gun after it's purchased, not for someone who is determined to kill. In other words, people get guns if they want guns. That's just a fact. And
I disagree. I don't think, like, the only argument for not having waiting periods is largely, I don't want to be inconvenienced, and if I want a gun, I want to buy it now. And don't get me wrong, I'm a gun nut. I like buying guns. I specifically have extensive background checks so that I don't ever have to wait in a queue. Like, during the pandemic, and everybody was, like, buying up guns, they would be like, oh, well, there's a waiting period to get all the background checks cleared and everything, and it's sometimes upwards to, like, 3 weeks. And I'd be like, not for me. I'm like, what do you mean not for you? And I'm like, not for me. I'm gonna get immediately cleared. And they're like, well, we'll see. And about 5 minutes later, they're like, oh yeah, you're immediately cleared. I'm like, I know, because I take the fucking time to get thorough background. I've got TSA fucking pre-clearance, and like also I've got my concealed carry, everything. So I always get fucking cleared. But that's because I have all of those extra steps. Which, if that could bypass a waiting period, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. But even if it didn't, the wisdom in having a waiting period is that so somebody who is having a real bad fucking day, maybe their wife left him, maybe they just learned that their mom died, and it causes a psychotic break or whatever. Doesn't matter what it is. Somebody's having the worst day of their fucking life. Can't just go buy a gun and hurt someone else or hurt themselves. They have 6 to 9 days, or however long you want to put it, to think about what they're going to do with that gun when they get it. I don't see a fucking problem with that. I legitimately don't. I mean, it's just what it is.
whether we like it or not, the more it becomes difficult for people to get guns, the more guns bad people will have and the fewer guns good people will have.
No. No.
That's just a fact. That's not an opinion. That is a fact. I don't like when evil has more power than good.
Okay, look. If we're not talking about mass shootings and you're talking about like criminality, sure. There's a possibility. Like, you could buy a gun on the black market and you're going to be able to get it faster than somebody who has to have a waiting period. But it's not like this is, the Revolutionary War, And on one side are the criminals, and on the other side are the law-abiding citizens. And it's an arms race where they're trying to get as many guns as fucking possible, right? That's not that's not how it fucking works. But also, the somebody who might be wanting to do like a mass murder, and they're gonna buy it legally because they can have a waiting period. They're gonna be able to buy a gun at the same rate as somebody who's a law-abiding citizen. And just logically, none of this fucking works. It's so weird.
So that's a big issue to me. I know people speak about
Yes, exactly. I don't get the logic he's asserting. If you want a gun, you wait a week for it. If you're irrational, though, a week might provide the time needed for them to be discovered, stopped, or for them to do something irrational. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed. Like, even people who are like, hardcore gun nuts, they're, like I said before, the only argument they have against it is because of convenience. That's it. That's it. There's really, that's the only fucking reason. And do I think that would really solve a whole lot of gun crime? Not necessarily. But could it solve some? Yeah. For a little bit of inconvenience, like less people die, I'm kind of okay with that. Like, yeah, that's fine.
how much more gun violence there is in America. That is entirely accurate, and we could address that. It is entirely accurate. And if a society has no guns, you will have very little gun violence. I fully acknowledge that too.
True.
But it's not possible. There are 400 million guns in the United States.
He's right.
So the thought that we won't have guns is absurd.
Yeah.
The more
Otto is so cute and a good boy. But no, Uncle Dennis is actually right on this one. I mean, if anybody has like a magic wand that they can just poof 400 million guns, then that might be a viable option. But it's just not. We don't live in that world. It's uncomfortable to have to accept, especially if you're like not pro-gun. But it is a reality.
more difficult it becomes to obtain a gun legally, the more the people who obtain them illegally will prosper. And those are criminals.
No.
Gangs will still get them.
If we're just talking about waiting periods, then it's not that it's harder to get a gun. It's just longer to get a gun. That's it.
Drug dealers will still get them. People who want to kill will still get them. Soon people will be able to make them in their home with 3D.
Too late.
Engineering. So you're going to have to figure out, we are going to have to figure out a way to solve this to the extent that we can without recourse to a fantasy of more gun control and more gun control and more gun control.
How about social spending? You down with that, Uncle Dennis? Are you down with that? Maybe improve people's lives, and proactively looking at our youth and how they're being raised, and having support systems for that. Investing in schools, universal access to health and mental health care. I think it would help. I think it would work. Are you down with that, Uncle Dennis? Are you down? What about gun shows? I don't know about everywhere else in the country. I know that in some places in the country, like the gun shows are wildly different. But here in Oregon, if you want to buy a gun at a gun show, you still have to go through a background check. Same as if you bought it in a gun store.
That's what they're pointing out here, and that's the way. That's reality. But there are so many deep.
Legally, you can buy a damn silencer. No, you can't just go buy a silencer in the United States. It's an NFA item, so you have to pay $200 tax stamp, and it takes anywhere from, if you file electronically these days, sometimes 3 to 4 months. But if you file through paper, it's usually over a year before you can even get that suppressor. Now, I think that's stupid. I think you should just be able to buy a fucking suppressor. It makes no sense why suppressors themselves are like this, seen as this dangerous thing. In European countries, suppressors are seen as a courtesy to your neighbors. So if you're like, you got a farm and you have to like scare off, predators from your livestock or whatever, it's seen as a courtesy to have a suppressor on your rifle so you don't freak out your neighbor's livestock, But that's because in those countries, that it's not seen as something that's going to be universally used as like a method of death. Also, the movies have taught us that suppressors, make things like very, very like sneaky, and that's just not the case. The like even the best suppression you can do on any gun is still noticeably loud. Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I mean, I wish we could just get them. It makes no sense to me. It's just bizarre.
Deeper issues, but let me give you one that literally just occurred to me this week. Megan is really waiting to hear this because she has heard everything I have to say about every subject that exists.
And you see, it just popped up with the next topic: can Jewish people get an abortion? Woof! Tackling some hard topics here today. We're only going to watch the gun segment. That's all we're interested in.
But she hasn't heard this because I haven't even said this on my radio show. I was thinking about this question. I think all of us, right or left, would agree that there is something way more dangerous than guns.
Cars.
Nuclear weapons. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
I mean, guns you can kill dozens. That's true. And I mean, in the course of a whole year in America, thousands clearly. But a nuclear weapon kills millions. So without question, there is a lot more to fear from nuclear weapons.
Okay. All right. All right. Hang on a second. All right. What is on this? There we go. Oh, yeah. I was writing down what kind of emotes we're going to do. So, total casualties. Hiroshima, 135,000 people. Nagasaki, 64,000 people. Okay, there we go. We're going to get our math here. We're doing our math. We're getting our math on here. I know I'm fact chunking. It's 199,000 people. Now, Dennis said that nuclear weapons kill millions of people. Well, they haven't. Have they? They haven't yet. So, let's see if we can get the most recent stats. Okay. In the United States in 2020, 45,000 people died from gun-related injuries. That means in less than 5 years, every less than 5 years, more or less, is the same amount that were killed in the entirety of nuclear weapons being employed on this planet. On this planet. Now, if you're talking about the potential nuclear weapons have, sure. But it's just absolutely fucking ridiculous. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. But what is he even? Why? Okay, it's so dumb.
Uh-oh. I mentioned nuclear weapons and he sort of freaks out. This is an issue.
The only reason to watch is now gone.
We usually surmise that he hasn't eaten, but I think my wife tends to feed him before the fireside chat. Did you happen to notice?
I don't know.
She of the famous arm? All right. Anyway, maybe he'll come back, folks. We don't know. But he was here for the opening. That's the major moment. So I want to talk to you about the nuclear weapons issue.
Okay.
So if...
Yeah, PM Triox. I think he might be doing that. Yeah, we'll see if he's going to be doing the nuclear deterrent argument.
We are to fear guns. We certainly should fear nuclear weapons. I don't have to make that point further. It's so obvious.
No?
Yet, let me ask you a question. Do we fear the UK having nuclear weapons? Britain?
I do.
We fear France having nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
They have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Interesting, no? Well, we do fear Russia having nuclear weapons.
Uh-huh.
We fear China having nuclear weapons.
Uh-huh.
So why is that? Because France and the UK are decent societies. Because they are free, relatively free countries.
Oh.
Russia and China are not.
Yeah.
They're run by bad people.
China and Russia were bad dudes.
B-A-D. Bad. Yes, there are good people and bad people.
That's how you
on
spell
planet
bad.
Earth.
That's how you spell bad, Uncle Dennis.
And that's why we fear nuclear weapons in the hands of the bad, but we don't fear nuclear weapons, which can kill millions, in the hands of the decent. Isn't it therefore obvious that the issue isn't nuclear weapons? The issue is who has them?
You know, Uncle Dennis, there's a thing. It's a thing that I think you're not really paying attention to right now. Nuclear weapons. They're what's the fucking word? They're starts with an R. Regulated. They're very, very regulated. Very regulated. Not everybody can have a nuclear weapon. I am a responsible gun owner. I think I would be a responsible nuclear weapon owner. I cannot have a nuclear weapon. Should I have a nuclear weapon? In Dennis Prager's mind, good people with guns are going to equal out against bad people with guns. So if China and Russia have nuclear weapons, it would stand to reason that good people should have nukes. Yes, nukes for Jeff. Nukes for me. When do I get my nukes? I'm responsible. I don't have a criminal record. I've never been arrested. I don't know how, but I've never been arrested. I'm a family man. A dedicated father and a husband. A patriot for my country, even. I believe in freedom. I vote. I recycle. Where's my nuke? I need a nuke for self-defense. What if a China, or a Russia show up on my doorstep and they've got a nuke? I need a nuke. Why can't I get a nuke?
That's the issue. If the Iranian government has them, they have basically promised they'll use them on Israel. And not just on Israel, but certainly first on Israel, because the greatest goal of the Iranian regime is to annihilate Israel, just as the greatest goal of Hitler was to annihilate Jews. That was more important to him than winning World War II. Okay. And it is more important to Iran. They have said it. What happened? What, do you get a snack? Mm-hmm. Otto. Here, come here, Otto. Oh, he's chewing something. She bribed him. The only way to bribe him, food.
Do you think Mrs. Prager gets talked to like that? And anytime Uncle Dennis wants a blowy?
The way to Otto's heart is through his stomach. The greatest aim of the Iranian regime is to annihilate Israel, and they would use nuclear weapons, and they've even said, we don't care if we lose 10 million people.
If super pro-gun folks' argument now is, well, guns aren't quite as bad as nukes, then I think they're struggling. I mean, I don't even know if necessarily that's where I think he's trying to say that our because I don't share it, our fear of only specific places having nuclear weapons is because it's based on whether or not they are bad people. So bad people shouldn't have nuclear weapons. But by that logic, bad people shouldn't have guns. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, it's his logic. I feel like I'm treading water in a swimming pool full of piss and shit trying to figure this out. Like, what the fuck, man? This is so bananas.
We have 60 million people. Uh-huh. Israel, on the other hand, has what, 8 million people? So we can annihilate Israel. They can't annihilate us.
bold statements there, bro.
So it is a very bad thing if Iran gets nuclear weapons. Is anybody afraid of Israel using nuclear weapons as a as a
Yes.
first use? No.
Yes. I'm afraid of anybody having nuclear weapons. What the fuck? There's no such thing as a good time for a country to have a nuclear fucking weapon. I'm sorry. That's ridiculous.
Israel, everyone believes has nuclear weapons. We're not afraid of that either, just like with France or the United Kingdom. All right. Yes, indeed. I think he's going to go back for more. This is a very important thing. We care who has nuclear weapons much more than we care that they exist. So too with guns. We care about who has them,
Yeah.
not that they exist. And by the way, the founders of the United States believed that the idea that the only people who can have guns is the government is a very scary thought.
Yeah, no, look. The fact that we have always had the Second Amendment is one thing, but it's not a universal thing. Also, it's not like we were like everybody should have a gun, because black people sure weren't allowed to have guns. Just a weird thing, man.
I just want to remind you what you never learned in college, and you certainly aren't going to learn that today. In the 20th century, 100 million people were killed in what we call genocides, the staggering mass murders of tens of millions. In every case, except Rwanda in the 1990s, in every single case, it was done by government. Governments are genocidal engines.
A based anarchist Dennis Prager. Tear down all governments.
Governments are concentration camp builders. Governments are mass murderers. There is nothing to compare with the amount of evil done by governments.
Based.
100 million civilians were killed in the 20th century, all by big governments, except for the 1 million in Rwanda. Now, I'm not against government. I'm not an anarchist. Of course we need governments. But I don't like the idea that people have the state, the government, the government, the government, the government. Ronald Reagan turned me around. Do you know I became a Republican in one sentence? I was a Democrat my whole life. Ronald Reagan did it. The government is not the solution, it's the problem. And then I realized, oh my God, why didn't I think of that?
Ronald Reagan also fucked this country up horribly, worse than anybody else. We're still suffering under the bullshit that Ronald Reagan did. But whatever, you go off there. Look, if having a government is able to kill so many people, then shouldn't we all have a government? I mean, what's going to stop a bad guy with a government better than a good guy with a government? We need to, or do we need some government control? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we need government control. That's weird. Don't you? Wait. You know what? Maybe we're onto something here. Hang on. Maybe we're onto something here. What if we enacted restrictions and control laws in order to control government so that government can't get out of hand, and then the government won't be as much of a risk of just accidentally oopsie-doopsie doing a genocide? Wouldn't that be good? I think that might be good. Wouldn't that be a good idea? Huh. That's interesting.
Why didn't I think of that? I had studied totalitarianism. That was my field of study in graduate school. So the idea, the founders, this is pre-totalitarianism, pre-20th century, but they knew the idea that if the only people who have weapons is the state, then that's not necessarily a good thing for liberty and for liberty, simple as that, for people to be free. That's why we have a Second Amendment in the United States. This was a very...
Oh, yeah, that is something that we should point out, too. Ronald Reagan was specifically, him and the NRA enacted the Mulford Act. And the Mulford Act was very, very specifically to restrict the access of weapons to black people because they had a little thing called the Black Panther Party that was starting to arm up as a means of defense. and they shit their pants and enacted some of the worst, most restrictive gun control this country has ever seen. But Dennis isn't going to mention that because he doesn't really care, and because nothing can besmirch the name of the man he jacks off to every fucking night.
Thought through idea. If the government has all the power, it's not good for people. I once raised on MSNBC, believe it or not, they used to invite, on occasion, conservatives. And I was one. I went on Hardball with Chris Matthews, a very famous show at the time.
Yeah.
And we were talking about guns. And I said, as a Jew, I would just like to say, I wish all the Jews of Europe had guns. He went ballistic. He started screaming at me that I was mocking the Holocaust. My God, my grandfather had a brother killed in the Holocaust. I've written a major book on anti-Semitism. I was on the Holocaust Museum's board of directors. Mock the Holocaust? But he was a leftist, and I didn't expect him to think clearly. But why was that an odd thing to say, that I wish every Jew in Europe had a gun? Would that have stopped the mass murder of the Jews? No, it wouldn't have.
So I
But
say
it would have slowed it down, and it would have given Jews dignity. It is much better dying, killing your oppressor, than walking naked into a gas chamber or being killed naked. The Nazis were...
This is LARPy bullshit, dude. This is LARPy bullshit. The thing is, when you have something like that, or Rwandan genocide, or whatever, you might, and this is really something that I want to instill for anybody who's watching this. You might have a knee-jerk reaction where you want to think about alternative situations that might have changed the outcome. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just don't. Don't bother. Don't do it. Because whatever you're going to say is going to be devoid of the context of being there. Unless you're like an actual legit fucking scholar who understands all the ins and outs of it, just don't do it. You're going to sound like a fucking asshole. Like a total fucking prick. There were a lot of things going on that would give a bit of an issue for all the Jews in Europe to be able to fight against it. Depending on what country they were even in at the time, many of them were wildly disarmed, while other people in the country were armed up. I mean, that shit happened. There were other countries that got invaded, had their Jewish people slaughtered, that didn't have access to guns. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It's such a complicated issue that reducing it to, it would have been better if they had more guns, is pointless. He might be right, but it's a stupid thing to say. And you're just utilizing the Holocaust as a degree of political weight to try and push something that has nothing to do with it. And it's really fucked up. And you just end up sounding like a fucking asshole if you do it. So don't do it.
Sadists, aside from evil. Virtually every Jew in the Holocaust died naked. It's an amazing thing that people don't think about. The notion that guns are the enemy, bad people are the enemy. That's true for everything. It's true for nuclear weapons, not just guns. A ban on purchasing a rifle until the age of 21, as Governor Greg Abbott pointed out. 18-year-olds have been able to buy long guns in Texas for more than 60 years. Yet for decades, mass shootings were rare. The recent proliferation of mass shootings suggests a deeper malady than gun laws can fix. Firearm laws were few and weak before the 1970s. In other words, it was a lot easier to get a gun in the United States before the 1970s.
Right.
Yet only in recent decades have young men entered schools and supermarkets for the purpose of killing the innocent.
Right. Why is that?
That a teenager could look at a 9-year-old, aim a gun, and pull the trigger signals some larger social and cultural breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And that's my point. We have a cultural and moral breakdown.
Cultural and moral breakdown? No. We have a social failure. We have a social sickness. He wants to say cultural and moral breakdown because he wants to point at something specific politically and say that's the problem. That's it.
That's the issue. And that's a dividing line between right and left.
See?
They're not keen on the values issue.
See? Yeah.
They're keen on fighting inanimate objects. As I wrote a piece.
See, that's what it was. That's entirely what it was. That's entirely what it was. Is he wanted to bring it around to actually the problem is the left. That's it. That's what he wanted to do. This whole fucking video is just it's the problem is the left. Look, we have a sickness in America, specifically America. And it is a social sickness. It is a social problem. We have failed in so many ways, from the government all the way down to the home. We don't have the time to be able to raise our families the way we need to with the right kind of attention. We are struggling to figure out how our brains are even going to work with the new society that is the internet and social media, the distance that has grown between us, whereas before we were always so close. We are struggling to figure these things out, and we're putting no money into researching this on a broader level. There are lots of universities that are doing wonderful, wonderful work on it, but how is that being then addressed or further invested in a larger governmental sense? We're not. We're not. We're not looking at the reasons why people are fucking snapping. We're just saying, well, we just need better. It's a mental health crisis, so we just need to make sure people get the right kind of care. And then you ask the same people well, should we put money towards that? And they say, well, no, because we need small government. It's so fucking ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. The problem is that we're not doing anything. We're not doing anything about it. Not a fucking thing. And I hate to say it, but Uncle Dennis is right. Taking all the guns is impossible. It's impossible. And gun control can only do so much. Maybe it can help mitigate it to a certain degree. But the most important factor that would really knock all these numbers down is very simple. Invest in our own society. Not just financially, but with our hearts and our minds. That would help. Cute dog, though, buddy. Cute dog.